Satu is a foolish young boy who can't stand the thought of abandoning the love of his life to get married in another world. He follows the girl, Haim, who's revealed to be the princess of a kingdom. They end up getting married thanks to him crashing the wedding, and he gains the Ring of Light. Satu then finds out that he has to get married to 4 other princesses to acquire the full power to defeat the Abyss King. He then goes on an adventure, fighting monsters, winning the hearts of his various wives, and trying to protect his chastity while waiting for when he can return to his world with his true love. Except for that, Satu can only get stronger if he deepens his bonds with his wives. There's definitely a lot of love and good action awaiting him. A young Satu, while climbing a tree, sees a young girl and an old man stepping out of a portal. The girl introduces herself as Jaime and tells him to forget what he just saw. The two of them became friends from that point on. 10 years later, Jaime is making breakfast for Satu. This dude really just picked up a wife on the first day. That's crazy. Right now, Jaime looks like the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. It didn't help that he could barely keep his eyes focused and not on her melons. After breakfast, they greet Jaime's grandpa while heading off to school. At school, Jaime is showing off her awesome grades to her friends, while Satu's friends are a bunch of degenerate fools who are complaining about not having a girlfriend to spend summer vacation with. Satu then gets a text from Hime stating that they should meet up later for the summer festival. At the festival, they both have fun, while Satu waits for the perfect time to confess his feelings. Jaime makes the first move, but unfortunately, she tells him that she'll be going back to her homeland the next day. Satu remained dumbfounded and realized he should have confessed his feelings. What a fool. When they get back to their apartments, Satu sees the bright portal light he saw earlier as a kid. He rushes to the scene to stop his love from leaving. She then tells him that she'll be getting married in another world. Damn, she's really trying to shatter this guy's hopes and dreams. Satu then rushes into the portal with her. I've never seen someone so stupid. During the wedding ceremony, Satu finds out that Haime's name is actually Crystal, and she's the princess of Nokonatica. An abyssal demon suddenly crashes the wedding. Jaime then kisses Satu and hands over the second ring she was with to him, completely making the prince look like a fool in the process. The prince tosses a sword to Satu, who uses it to slay the demon before passing out. He wakes up in a couple's bedroom with Jaime by his side. The ring she gave him is known as the Ring of Light, and she has chosen him as the Rink King who will save the world. Later on, the two of them share a bath. She apologizes for dragging him into this mess, but he doesn't mind being her husband and a hero. Their wonderful session is interrupted by a bell, signaling the attack of more monsters from the abyss. They both rush out, barely dressed, to find out what's going on. Satu then gets a weapon and has to embrace the role of the Ring King and save his wife and her kingdom. Lucky guy. Haime's grandpa explains to Satu that the strength of the bond of his marriage translates to how strong the ring's power would be. This means he's actually going to die. Her grandfather is also known as Sage Alabaster, and for a sage, the man is completely useless. An abyssal knight confronts Satu, and he immediately gets slammed to the wall. Satu and Alabaster make a run for it, since they aren't prepared to handle the knight. Alabaster tries to buy them some time, but they get cornered. Luckily, the prince shows up and helps them get on a carriage and flee the castle. He's most likely just trying to get rid of the guy who just stole his wife. I completely understand him. Jaime was fortunately on the carriage and very happy to see her husband. The prince introduces himself and tells Satu to just call him Mars. Alabaster tells Satu that his powers are still small and that he would need 4 more rings to fully unleash them. This means he has to marry 4 other princesses and get their rings. Basically, Satu is a fool meant for the streets, and Jaime is unfortunately just a side piece. Jaime definitely wasn't happy to hear about this. They get to an inn where Satu would have to share a room with Jaime. Alabaster then tells them the tale of the first Ring King, who made the 5 rings of the 4 major elements, with the 5th element being light. With the power of the rings, he defeated the Abyss King and shared the rings with his wives, who passed them down through generations. In their bedroom, Satu shows his scars to Jaime, who feels bad and runs out of the room. Maybe she didn't just want to lay in bed with the fool. Satu runs out to find her and comes across Mars. The prince thanks him for taking on the role of the Ring King and tells him where Jaime is. After confessing their love to each other in the garden, they return to their bedroom for the main point of marriage. Satu immediately chickens out like a wimp and tells her that they should take things slow in their marriage. What a waste of built-up tension. The next morning, they get prepared to go to the Elf Kingdom, Romka. They are the ones who possess the Ring of Wind. While talking about the elves, Alabaster keeps letting his fantasies leak out of his mouth. What exactly is wrong with this old man? Unfortunately, when they get there, they see that Romka has been surrounded by a tempest wall for some years, which prevents the entry of people who are not elves. Thanks to some elves, they pass through an underground passage and arrive in Romka. They get to the throne room and see the princess hiding from them. The princess then flees at the thought of making out with another person. It seems Satu has a lot of convincing to do. Princess's elder brother, Jade Romka, then comes in and introduces himself and tells them his sister's name is Nefritis. He then calls some guards to take Satu into custody while he treats the rest as welcome guests. I guess he didn't want his sister to be married to such a useless fool. Jade then tells Satu that he'll be locked up for 80 years, which will give Nefritis enough time to mature since she's 54. You never really get used to how elves age. Also, Jade definitely has a freakish and unhealthy sister complex. After 3 days, Satu gets saved by a beautiful elf lady who shows him a secret passage in his cell. The elf takes him to the Wind Temple, where the wind ring is. Nefritis suddenly sneaks in and starts praying to the statues of the elf king and queen there. The ring's power was still being used by her parents to create the wind wall, even though they were petrified. Satu does a horrible job of hiding and ends up revealing himself. This makes Nefritis pass out on the spot. Just seeing the foolish ring king made her pass out. This guy's presence is really not a welcoming thing. He then takes Nefritis and follows the elf lady, who reveals that she's the elder of the elves. Satu then gets left in a room alone with Nefritis to fulfill his duties and obtain the ring. Nefritis wakes up and barfs at the sight of Satu, while the elder informs Jade that the princess and the ring king have eloped. Jade just started shaking on the spot and found it hard to believe. How obsessed is this guy with his sister? Satu, on the other hand, is sitting down beside a naked princess because he has to wash their clothes. While trying to convince her to take a chance and go into the outside world, Nefritis smothers Satu's hands in her bosom and gives him the best view of her melons. This guy has been having a field day since he left his world. Jade comes to the house to confront them and commands Nefritis to abandon any thoughts she has of Satu. The princess leaves with her brother, while the elder confesses that the whole thing was her idea, so she'll handle Satu while Jade leaves with his sister. The elder then introduces herself as Peridot to Haim. Peridot then tells them that Nefritis's elder sister was supposed to inherit the ring, but she fell in love with a traveler whom the elves suspected. They thought the human wanted to steal the ring and drove him out, which led the elder sister into despair. She cursed the elves before leaving, so their mother erected the wind barrier to protect their kingdom. So it's the evil mother who's stopping their children from getting all loved up. Alabaster advises Satu to give up on the Ring of Wind for now and try to obtain the others. While leaving, they see some abyss monsters entering the city and bypassing the barrier. Maybe now the stupid Jade will realize how foolish he and his parents are. The monsters lay waste to the city, while Peridot tries to get Nefritis to do something. Jade confronts an abyss knight who is about to steal the wind ring, and he gets slammed around the place. Satu and his group show up, just in time to save the foolish elf before he gets turned into minced meat. He was also getting tossed around by the knight, which made Haim realize that she had to bring her fellow side piece to help out. While Haim tries to get Nefritis to help out, Peridot comes to back up Satu and the rest. Haim was begging this girl to marry her husband. I never thought I'd see the day a girl would do this. Thanks to Haim's whining and crying, Nefritis finally agreed to come and help. The two princes then smashed the statues of the elf king and queen in order to retrieve the ring. She picked up the rings and rushed to give Satu a kiss. This was really hard for Haim to watch. With the power of the two rings, Satu's power increased exponentially, and he was able to drive off the monsters. He was able to defeat the Abyss Knight in the nick of time before passing out. Satu woke up to the view of his two beautiful wives. And this reminds us why he's the best guy on the block. The former princess who ran away, Smaragdi, then shows up to thank him for saving the kingdom of Romka. Apparently, she was the face behind the Abyss Knight. The Abyss King gave her a black wind ring, which controlled her. Hopefully, the writer didn't do something cliché with his identity. He couldn't have, right? After that, Satu gets into a hot spring bath with his two wives. You'd think it would be a hot scene, but you don't expect two wives to immediately get along with each other. As if it weren't awkward enough, Peridot joined them and wanted to get a close-up look at how Satu and Jaime made love to each other. Of course, Satu chickened out at the last moment once again. That night, Alabaster told Smaragdi that he knew her lover and that he was now living a peaceful life in a land far away. The next day, Satu leaves with his wives while Smaragdi and Peridot discuss. It's revealed that Peridot was also a former ring princess. Smaragdi also finds out that Alabaster is the same name as the man who was her lover. Haim woke up from a terrible nightmare where she had to watch Satu make love to Nefritis. It's really going to be a long journey for this girl. While Alabaster says they will be visiting the land of water next, Haim looks like she is about to send Nefritis to the afterlife. Satu wasn't even helping because of how much time he was spending with the elf. They suddenly get approached by a moving city known as the Land of Fire, Nidakita. They then decide to get the Ring of Fire with the opportunity of coming across the city. Nefritis shows she's afraid of heights, but Jaime isn't about to let the elf snatch her husband again. I wonder how this guy is going to handle 5 of them. He's really in for it. Nefritis was thrilled at the sight of the cat people and their nation because it was just as she read in some books. She and Jaime got separated from the rest because the stupid elf started wandering through the market. Some cat girls direct them to the arena since it's the biggest landmark in Nidakita. They were bound to find Satu and the rest there. On the other hand, Satu was panicking because he's a useless husband who can't even keep his eye on his 2 wives. He then thought the cat girls were staring at him because of his strength, but they quickly surrounded Mars, who obviously looked better. While sharing a meal, Nefritis apologizes for stealing Satu and tells Jaime that she wants to strive to be a better wife. Of course, this doesn't help Haim's situation in any way. Satu finally meets up with them, and they enter the arena. They meet the Fire Princess, who will only marry Satu if she can beat him. Why am I not surprised? There definitely had to be a musclehead among his group of wives. The princess, Grenart, immediately rushes him and starts attacking. Before Satu can react, he gets knocked out on the spot. Seeing how weak he is, Mars started training Satu so he could defeat Grenart. Haim then came later to cheer up her husband while he was taking a break. Alabaster came to train him in the art of magic. Nefritis was just watching from afar because she knew she could never be the #1 wife. Poor girl. In the bathhouse, Satu draws the short end of the stick and ends up getting scrubbed by the most muscular man in this show. I'm sure he lost most of his dignity in the process. After that, Grenart shows up and asks him to scrub her. Grenart tells him that she'll throw in the towel in their next fight. But Satu's pride won't let him accept that, so he continues to practice and prepares to make Grenart his next wife. The next morning, Satu wakes up to see Nefritis under the sheets. The elf tries to cheer up and advise her husband in her own way, but the foolish boy is too dense to read the situation. He just got out of bed and left her there. While Satu practices with Mars, Jaime overhears some cat girls saying that Grenart has already surrendered her body to Satu. She was having a hard time with the idea of Satu touching another woman's body. At the same time, she was fantasizing about him caressing her melons and leading her into paradise. She should pick a struggle. The time finally comes, and everyone comes to watch the battle between Satu and Grenart. Meanwhile, the fighter who just lost gets consumed by the Ring of the Abyss King that he found. The fighter interrupts Satu's battle as he becomes an Abyss Knight. The knight summons some fire monsters to make things worse. Just when we were about to see Satu get flung around the arena, he tries to sneak up on the knight but gets slammed into the walls. I'm beginning to think slamming this guy into walls is a thing. Thanks to the power of the rings, he was able to still defeat the knight while working together with Grenart. He challenges Grenart to a fight again to prove that he's worthy to be her husband. Poor Haim is really going through serious pain. She should smack some sense into this guy. Without thinking about it, Jaime screams that she'll let him have his first time in bed with her if he wins. This sent signals to his head, and he unlocked the strength of the gods. I mean, who wouldn't? A voice from the ring spoke to Satu and helped him defeat Grenart. The cat princess immediately kissed him and wanted to proceed with the baby-making process. He told Grenart to wait until he was done with his arrangements with Haim. It finally came down to it, and this stupid guy fell asleep while fondling her melons. Is he ever going to be serious? Satu woke up the next morning to his wives bickering over who was next to get in on some action. They all attend a banquet after that, and Haim ends up getting herself drunk because she is getting really jealous. Satu takes her back to their room, where he tells her that he's waiting to return to his world together before he will do it with her. What if he dies and never gets to do it? What happened to seizing the moment? He was fondling her melons while Nefritis and Grenart were watching. Grenart couldn't wait any longer and was about to strip him of his chastity. but Jaime and Nefritis knocked her out. Satu and his entourage arrive in Massa, the land of water. With no delay, he meets Saphir, princess of Massa, who lands a kiss and gives him the next ring. Finally, there's someone who made this process easier. Just one more ring, and we can get the credits rolling. A knight then shows up to take Saphir back to the palace, so all of them return with her. She says that Satu has to help. If not, the kingdom would perish. On the boat ride, they find out that the knight is Mars's older brother, Sluder. The Empire seems to be occupying Massa under the pretext of protecting them from the Abyss King. As they arrive at the palace, they get attacked by an octopus monster. Satu shows off the power of the rings and defeats it while protecting his numerous wives. You just know they'll be giving him a wonderful reward after that. Inside the palace, they meet Saphir's father, who looks like he's being controlled by the words of the palace oracle. Stupid man doesn't even have the will to think for himself anymore. Saphir then introduces them to her twin sister, Saphira, who doesn't seem convinced that Satu is a man worthy of being a husband. Granart and Nefritis go further to degrade him, leaving only Jaime to defend her husband's honor. So much for having reliable wives. Mars then shows himself to Saphira, but she says that she never wants to hear his voice again and runs off. Saphir then tells them that Mars and her sister once swore their love for each other. Saphira definitely hates him for trying to get married to 5 other women. Marse was earlier sent by the emperor to spy on Massa, but he fell in love with Saphira and abandoned his duties. He was supposed to become the Ring King and marry her, but Satu stole the spotlight. Saphira thinks he's a lying scum who doesn't keep his promises. After some time, the oracle showed up in Massa and started making predictions that were coming true. But Saphir believed that the woman was an agent sent by the Empire. The oracle sends some assassins to kill Satu in his sleep, but Granart takes them out. The assassins try again during the day, but Alabaster stops the arrow attack. I'm wondering how clueless Satu can be. This is supposed to be the Ring King? They get to a sunbath, where the princesses start fighting about who gets to sleep with Satu first. Satu goes to talk with Mars, who says that Satu is more fit to be the Ring King and not a failure like him. Later that night, the oracle tells Mars to kill Satu and steal the rings as an order from the emperor. The oracle swindles Marse with her words and gives him an anti-magic sword, which will be used to defeat Satu. Marse then walks away while being lost in thought. He sees Saphira taking a bath, but she runs away from him. This further drives him into despair, which makes the sword take over his mind. Solder then heads out to fight some monsters while leaving Satu to handle the palace. Satu heads outside, and Jaime comes to kiss him, to give him power if he finds himself in a fight. The rest of his wives come along to do the same thing, and it immediately turns into a cat fight. Saphir just stood on the side and was sick of the whole thing. At least, there's one person who still has a functioning brain. A monster finds its way to the palace, and Satu gets ready to fight it. Mars sneaks up on him and attacks, leaving Alabaster to deal with the monster. Satu was trying to understand why Mars was attacking him instead of knocking some sense into the prince. There's no time for all these theatrics. The rings start telling Satu to use their powers and kill Mars, but he would rather save his friend. Satu lets himself get attacked so he can talk some sense into Mars. The prince tells the Ring King to kill him, but Satu uses the opportunity to destroy the gem on Mars's sword, which breaks the spell. I can't believe this dude completely lost it, because he got rejected by a girl. What happened to looking out for brothers first? The monster spins out of control and takes Saphira as a hostage. In the middle of the chaos, Mars asks Saphira to marry him. Couldn't he have waited until she was saved? Luckily, Satu used the opportunity to cut the monster's tentacles and set her free. The oracle then reveals herself as one of the Abyss King's knights. Saphir kisses Satu and uses the power of the ring to transform into a water dragon, and she kills the monster. The Abyss Knight then flees the scene. Saphir transforms back, but with no clothes, and she looks as bare and as flat as can be. Thanks to their victory, Saphir's dad came back to his senses. The king recognized Satu as a good husband, although Saphir didn't. Then he approved of the marriage between Saphira and Marse. The oracle returned to the emperor and reported the situation. She tried to seduce the emperor, but he quickly killed her. He then decides to exterminate anyone who stands against him, be it the Abyss King or the Ring King. The princesses started arguing about who would get to sleep with Satu for the night. He then lets them know that Jaime will always be number one. But they don't even mind that, especially Nefritis, who I think is suffering from some serious low self-esteem. Satu suddenly starts seeing them naked, while the voice of the rings tells him to take all of them. Jaime was disgusted at him for even trying that, so she walked out. So much for being number one. He suddenly wakes up to see all of them asleep around him. While the others slept, he asked Himi to go on a date with him. Nefritis wanted to come along, but Satu made her remember her place in his life. Poor girl. He then goes to ask Alabaster for some money. This fool didn't even have money for the date in the first place. Alabaster hands him some money and tells him to get a room with her. This old man is really into this, and it's creepy. While Satu and Jaime went out, Grenart and the other wives were spying on them. The townspeople interrupted their date, but Satu still had some time to enjoy a meal with Jaime. They get to an area that's meant for lovers, and they start feeling nervous. It was about to be an intense kiss moment, but Satu had to chicken out because he was shy about doing it in public. How many times is it now? Jaime should just throw this guy away. He's not worth it. Saphir and the rest even got sick of it and just wanted to go home. Nefritis was at least happy that she was becoming friends with the other princesses. After enjoying some sweets in an open field, they start heading back to their room. On the way, Himi tells Satu to involve his other wives and not to save the special treatment for only her. Satu ends up kissing her to prove that she's the only one for him. He finally took the initiative. I was starting to think there was no hope for this boy. The moment gets pretty heated to the point of them wanting to get a room, but Haim kills it, and they head back home. Yeah, there's definitely no hope for either of them. As they get ready to head out to the land of Earth, Saphir bids her sister farewell. Satu then finds out that the dwarves were wiped out in the last battle between the Ring King and the Abyss King. The few that survived isolated themselves underground. They didn't even know if there was a ring or princess there. And Alabaster continued to be useless throughout the discussion. Satu and his group got to the foot of the mountain but had to go the rest of the way by foot. 3 days passed, and they still hadn't arrived at Edenoken. Alabaster was most likely trying to get them killed. Saphir then finds out that she's the only one with a useful transformation out of all the wives. At night, they get to a safe location and set up camp. Satu asks Alabaster why they're even bothering to gather the rings, when it looks like no one ever believes in the power of the Ring King. Alabaster tells him that the power of mankind wouldn't be enough to defeat the Abyss King. So luckily, Satu is still somewhat useful despite his foolishness. Satu then goes to sleep, while Alabaster doubts himself as a great sage. The next day, they finally arrive at the Dwarven city of Edenoken. The city was ruined and abandoned. Everyone feels bad for the dwarves, except for Nefritis, who never fails to show that there's definitely something wrong with her. They arrive at the throne room, which looks desolate, and find some dwarven relics that were thought to be myths. Satu comes across a robot known as a sorcerer's unit, but it can only be powered with magic. The robot suddenly starts attacking them, but they find out that it's being controlled by the Abyss King. Satu gets trapped behind a wall, but he breaks through and uses the power of Haim's kiss to defeat the knight. Isn't their bond strong enough for him not to need that anymore? Or do they just like using it as an excuse to make out? The black rings in their possession and in the possession of the Emperor suddenly return to the Abyss King to resurrect him. They suddenly get surrounded by a huge swarm of abyssal monsters. Even when they run outside, I guess it's curtains closed for them. Roll the credits. Saphir couldn't turn into a dragon since they were in a land with little water magic. They started fighting the monsters, but there was no end to them. Alabaster then bought them some time as they all ran away. The sage lost all hope as he saw the Abyss King's army of monsters. He then teleports Satu and his princesses away, while Mars stays back to fight. What a waste of a journey. Satu woke up back in Japan with his wives. Satu walked in on them, trying to understand how things worked in the modern world. Satu and Haim accompany the girls to get some modern clothes for them. After that, they go to a restaurant to figure out their next plan. Everyone else there was wondering how a useless guy like Satu was surrounded by so many beautiful girls. Either that, or they wondered why the girls looked weird with horns and cat ears. They decide to look for spots with dense magic, which could be used to teleport back. Unfortunately, they didn't find any leads. Granart feels it's the perfect opportunity to start making babies and repopulate her species. Is this lady ever serious in any situation? Or does she only see herself as a baby factory? At night, Jaime tells Satu that she found a letter from her grandfather stating that he left some money for her to live a happy life with. Days passed, and everyone tried living a normal life in Japan, but the thought of the Abyss King still plagued their minds. Jaime met up with Satu, who was snooping around the woods, and told him to forget about her world and live a happy life with her. A girl suddenly pops out of a shrine as they're about to have a moment. She introduces herself as Amber Edenoken, and she's the protector of the Ring of Earth. Amber tells them that she's a robot that was made to look like the princess of Edenoken, and she was sent to the modern world to protect the ring. Jaime flips out on the robot and tells her that Satu won't be returning to their world since she believes they have already lost. Jaime kept the news of Amber from the other wives and told Satu that they had to embrace their new lives. This girl is just desperate to remain with him forever. Amber then informs Satu that she has the power to return them to Arnulus. After a while, Satu finds the resolve he's been looking for. He kisses Amber and obtains the 5th ring of Earth. Satu finally convinces Jaime to return to Arnulus, and they try to have their first time in bed. Amber appears just in time to interrupt their session. Are they ever going to be able to get this done? At this point, they should just forget about the whole thing. With the preparations set, they return to Arnulus with Amber's teleportation spell. They return to Edenokan, where they find the dead bodies of Imperial soldiers and abyss monsters. Reinhardt sensed something and saw that the Imperial army was still engaging the monsters. The soldiers' attacks were nothing but a nuisance to the Abyss King. They were just like pesky flies to him. Satu then uses the power of the rings to tear through the monsters and approach the Abyss King. The rings then combine together into one, and Satu unleashes a huge power. With the power imbued in his sword, he slices the Abyss King and destroys his army. Unfortunately, the Abyss King survived, and even Satu's rings were shocked. I guess in the end, he was nothing but useless and incompetent. Satu falls to the ground due to being exhausted after using the power of the rings. The Abyss King was about to kill him, but Granart and the rest of his wives rushed to save their useless husband. Granart and Amber took on the monster while the rest watched over Satu, but there were too many creatures to deal with. Satu passed out and nearly became consumed by the abyss. When he woke up, he saw that Alabaster had saved them. The sage was able to save them with the help of Smaragdi. True love wins again. I wonder what the age difference is between these two. They get back to a town, and Alabaster tells them that the Abyss King survived, most likely due to the black rings in his possession. Unfortunately, there's no information about those rings. Once again, Alabaster continues to be incompetent. The sage tells them that they have to train to become stronger and strengthen their bonds. The next day, Jaime and Satu visit the graves of Jaime's parents. The rest met up with them after Jaime's heartfelt speech. A mage, known as Morian Ravri, then shows up. She's also Jaime's little sister, and is going to be Jaime's teacher for the upcoming training. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content.